What if I told you that Starry Night actually got a massive boost from Dawn of Majesty? I'm Teague with Battle City Games, and today we're going to be profiling my updated Starry Night deck profile. Alright guys, so like I said, I believe that this deck actually got a massive boost from Dawn of Majesty, and yes, we do have brand new Starry Night support coming up in Burst of Destiny. I'm just amazed that this deck keeps getting better and better with each set, and with each set and each increment of support, it keeps climbing closer to that competitive status that we all want to see it at. As always, if you enjoy this content, please hit that thumbs up button. It helps us out so much, and we'd love to see your support. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that other content that we have coming up for you guys. Alright, let's go ahead and dive on in. So first up, we have triple copies of Starry Night Dragon. I don't know that this will ever get reduced because it is the backbone of the deck, unless we see another archetype-specific level 7 Light Dragon or some other level 7 Light Dragon that just blows this one out of the water. We will probably continue to see this guy played at 3. Because you do always want to have access to him. We then have triple copies of Starry Night Rael. Again, she's just probably your best starter card in the deck as she searches any of your Starry Night spell or traps, as well as reviving your Starry Nights from the graveyard. She is also your beefiest Starry Night at 1800 attack. We are back up to triple copies of Flamel. And you'll see why a little bit later on in the profile. I've always liked Flamel because of his ability to quick effect bounce your dragon back to your hand from field or graveyard, so you can recycle a dragon back to your hand if maybe your opponent forgets that Flamel is in your graveyard or is just not that familiar with him because he's a Starry Night card, and maybe catch him off guard there. We are still on 2 copies of Estelle as well. Estelle has that great quick effect that you can target a light monster you control and tribute it, and then special summon a level 7 light dragon monster from your hand. So it's just another option to get our dragon on board so we don't have to rely on ceremony or arrival solely, and it's great if we have multiple copies of the dragon in our hand. Then for the last Starry Night monster, we are down to 1 copy of Seal. I've been back and forth on this. You could potentially cut a card from your deck to maybe bump him up to 2, and I'll show you what that card is later. But he is still pretty good because if he's in your hand, you can return a level 7 Light Dragon you control to the hand to special summon himself. So he can bounce your Starry Dragon back to hand just to get his own body on board to allow to set up for other plays. And then if he's in your graveyard, you can banish him and then special summon a dragon from your hand. So he kind of gets the dragon back to your hand and then also gets it out of your hand. Good card, but he is a little more situational than a lot of the others. He's not usually really a starter. He's more of a late game card after you've kind of got your setup going. That's going to do it for the Starry Night monsters. Now moving into one of the brand new support cards we got. That is Protecting Spirit Logeth. Right now I'm testing out 2 copies of her. You could potentially bump her up to 3. But the only issue is you don't want to see multiple copies in your hand. You would like to start with 1 or see her by turn 2, but you really don't want to have multiple copies sitting in your hand. But what she does, she's a level 7 light fairy, both important aspects. If this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target 1 monster on the field. It cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. We don't really care about that. You can only use each of the following effects of Protecting Spirit Logeth once per turn. If the effect of a fairy monster you control is activated, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then you can target 1 face-up card your opponent controls and 1 attack position monster you control. Banish that opponent's card, and if you do, change your monster to defense position. So any of our Starry Nights that activate on the field, because remember we have to control it, having the card in the graveyard is not counted as controlling. But any of our Starry Nights that activate on the field, which is Rael, Flamel, or Estelle, would all trigger this card. And she's just a great extender we can get out. and then she has that ability to banish opponent's monsters. This is really good if we are forced to go second, which is something the deck has struggled with in the past, is not really having much to do to break boards. But now we can do something as simple as summoning Raelle, triggering her effect to search, and then triggering off our Logith. And at that point, our opponent's going to be at a critical decision point because they are going to have to choose between negating the Raelle, negating the summon of the Logith, or potentially losing their monster to her banish effect. So, great extender, and being level 7 will come up because our Starry Night Dragon is also level 7, and we'll get to that once we see the extra deck. And then for the last two non-hand trap monsters in the deck, we are playing double copies of Artifact Scythe. I still think that this is the best way to play this deck. Just provides extra disruption for the deck. And the thing you need to remember, when you are playing a non-meta deck that does not do the same kind of things that most meta decks do, you're not Rocket Dragon Link, you're not Tri-Brigade, you need to find unfair cards that you can use that other decks can't use as well. An Artifact Scythe is an absolutely unfair card that says when it is summoned, your opponent cannot special summon from their extra deck for that turn. In most cases, that's going to blank your opponent for the entire turn and give you time to set up a more dominating board state. So 2 Scythe, I feel like you don't really need a third. The game should not be going that long. You should not be going into this card that much. And I did decide to cut the Moral Talk back. I needed to make space, and I feel like shutting my opponent out for an entire turn is more important than just destroying one card. If you really wanted to, you could go 1-1, but I really want to make sure I have access to the Scythes. And then for our monster hand trap of choice, get out of here, we have triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Just for best generic hand trap in the game, I did debate on potentially going with something like Effect Veiler, but Ash Blossom is still just a little bit too powerful, so I decided to go for her. But if you don't have copies, I do really recommend Effect Veiler. That would be a great alternative option for you. Moving on into the spells, of course we're going to play triple Balefire. This just gets you any Starry Night monster from your deck, and if your opponent controls Dark Monster, it'll let you special summon the dragon at resolution as well. Triple copies of Ceremony. This is the reason we can play artifact monsters without fear, and we don't really have to worry about drawing multiple copies of Logith that much, because Ceremony will allow us to shuffle one back to add the dragon to our hand, and then when our opponent activates any sort of effect, we'll just get to special summon the dragon out. So it really has to make our opponent play more carefully, because at any point during your turn, we could use Ceremony to respond to something and disrupt their plays. Now, another change I recently made to the deck was cutting out Pot of Extravagance to play double Pot of Prosperity. I just think that with some of the options we have now and the direction the deck's going, Prosperity gives us a little bit better setup because it allows us to dig for something like our Logith, which is not actually searchable in the deck. If you don't have access to Prosperity, continue to play the Extravagance and just make a few changes to the extra deck. Drawing 2 cards is still extremely powerful, but I wanted to push this deck as far as I could, so I decided to swap it out for Prosperity. Then for the last spell, I am playing the 1 Starry Night Sky. I feel like there's ways you could build this deck to really abuse Sky and the ability that it gives you to get an additional normal summon. Because when you have access to this, it just means you can easily put 2 Starry Nights on board in order to go for any sort of link play you want to make. But right now, I just don't feel like that's the direction the deck should go in. But nonetheless, having access to that additional summon can be useful, and you'll see that with some of the extra deck stuff we have. And then, of course, if your dragon returns to your hand during your turn, you can draw a card. I really wish I was during either player's turn. That would make this card much, much better. But still, there will be situations where you want to bounce it back on your own turn. And again, it's searchable off your rails, so you don't really need multiple copies. Moving into the traps, still on triple Imperm as our other hand trap. This card is extremely powerful in this format, and I think it's one of the best hand traps you can play. Again, if you don't have access to them, Veiler, Ghost Spell would be another great option, but if you have Imperm, I think you should have it in your deck. Of course, we're going to have triple copies of Sanctum, just to make sure we get that Scythe as much as possible. I do realize we're playing 3 Sanctum and only 2 artifacts. It is extremely unlikely that you're going to see all 3 of your Sanctums in a game and actually need to resolve all 3 of them, but we do want to maximize our chances of opening up with the card. We then do have double copies of Starry Night Arrival still. This just allows us to always have the ability to summon or return our dragon to hand. Very important card for the deck, but you never need more than 1, so we don't want to max out on this. Still also playing 2 copies of Starry Night Blast. Again, it's not a counter trap. Don't know why Konami made it not a counter trap, but still it can easily disrupt your opponent. And if you went first and you set this up, they're not really going to be able to respond to it with too many effects, regardless of the fact that it's not a counter trap. So it's still a good option to have, especially if you can do something as crazy as maybe you summon your dragon out off of a ceremony, use Blast to negate something and bounce it back to your hand, and then summon it back out in that same turn off of something like an Estelle, a Flamel, or a Arrival. So great synergy there. You could potentially cut one of these as the second seal or the third Logith if you wanted, but for now I really like 2 copies. And then for the last 2 traps, still playing Punishment, still one of the best generic trap cards in the game for purposes of disruption. This is one of the other cards where you could cut down to 1 copy to play the third Logith or the second seal. I've actually been back and forth on it, but for now I want to stick with 2 Punishment because, again, we need to do unfair things, and destroying 2 cards off of 1 card is pretty unfair. Moving on into the extra deck, the brand new card out of Dawn of Majesty that really made me want to come back to this deck and see how much further I could push it is triple copies of Volo Ferniges, the Darkest Dragon Doom Rider. Say that 5 times fast. This is a rank 7 Dragon Exceed that says once per turn you can detach 2 materials from this card, then target 1 face-up card on the field, destroy it, and if you destroy a monster, you can make 1 face-up monster you control gain attack equal to the destroyed monster's original level or rank times 300 until the end of the next turn. This card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect, and this is a quick effect if this card has a dragon monster as material, but it cannot be activated during the damage step. So, Starry Night, Starry Dragon is a dragon monster. Logith is a level 7 monster that we can special summon out relatively easy. That means we can do something the deck could not previously do, which is easily put 2 level 7 monsters on board. And that turns our Starry Night Dragon potentially into 2 disruptions because it will destroy a card when it comes out, and then we can overlay into Darkest Doom Rider, and then that will give us an additional disruption. And again, the reason I went back to 3 Thamel is because you can actually overlay into Doom Rider, use his destruction effect on your opponent's turn, and then activate that quick effect of your Flamel in graveyard to banish it and add your Starry Dragon back to hand to then special summon again off of Ceremony or Arrival. So again, you can just see how with all these additional cards, this deck can actually get really out of hand really quickly. It went from only having really probably 1 disruption per turn to having, 3-4 disruptions fairly easily. So a massive improvement for the deck and an absolutely great card to add in. We do have the 3 copies, of course, because you could easily go into 2. You may go into the 3rd, but it's also a possibility to banish off of your Prosperity. At least 1 copy. I wouldn't banish more than 1 copy. Then for just another rank 7 option, decided to throw the Flare Metal in here. Time is a thing. This card is great to go into if you're worried about that, or if you just need to get some additional damage in. Probably one of the better generic rank 7s you can have. For the rank 4s, we are going with 1 Dweller, 1 Tornado Dragon, and I have 1 Exciton Knight in here. Just utility cards. I've always said that your extra deck here is utility, but the difference now without extravagance and with Prosperity, we can play a more diverse array of cards because we don't have to play as many multiples. So Dweller, of course, for graveyards, Tornado Dragon, if you just want some disruption for your opponent's back row, if you know you're playing against something like Eldritch, Striker, anything that you're worried about back row. And Exciton, if you're able to get him off and wipe your opponent's board, it's going to be a game changer. So you might as well have him in here as an option. Then for our Link monsters, we've got double copies of Lina, the Light Charmer. Just a good option. Light is a fairly common attribute, so the odds of you being able to steal something like an Effect Veiler or any other light monster are decently high, better with a lot of the other Charmers. So we decided to go with 2 copies. We have the 1 Artifact Dagda. This was in the last profile, but now that we aren't playing Extravagance, we have a better opportunity to make use of this card. Just a good option because since our Starry Dragon can destroy a card, even if we don't have Sanctum, we can use something like our Starry Sky to summon out 2 Starry Knights, go into Dagda, and then activate anything in order to set the Scythe. And then during our opponent's turn, if we have a way to summon out our Dragon, we can just summon out Dragon, pop the Scythe, and blank our opponent's turn. So good card to have access to if the situation arises. For more generic cards, we have the 1 Nightmare Phoenix, the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and the 1 Access Code Talker. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you don't have access code, play Boral Sword here, play Boral Load here. Just anything that can help push through OTKs. Again, your Starry Knight, you're not usually going to put that many monsters on board, but we want to make sure we have at least 1 rank 4 in case a situation arises. And then for the last 2 cards, double copies of Nis. This is just your Dogmatica punishment target. Nothing else to say really. If you do cut punishment down to 1, then obviously you can cut 1 Nis and fit in any other monster you want, whether it's another Exceed or another Link monster, whatever you feel like at that moment. But that's going to do it for the profile, guys. I am so excited to see this deck go even further than it has before. And you can guarantee I'll be back after Burst of Destiny with another updated profile once we have Orbital. But let me know what you think of the deck down below. Do you agree with me that Dawn of Mastery was a great set for the deck? Or do you think that maybe we need to wait for Burst of Destiny to get that additional support? And again, as always, please give us that thumbs up button. Helps us out immensely. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on that upcoming content. Till next time, I'm Teague with Battle City Games.